At the end of the day, like my personal goal for the RevOps team is that we are the stewards. We are building the ultimate go-to-market machine for Retool. Now, every single one of those words has meaning to me, right? We want to aspire to build something really incredible. We also want this thing to literally be a machine, right? And a machine is elegant, it is efficient, it functions well, it is something that produces a known output given certain inputs, right? So that's kind of the way that we think about our job, and we think about the infrastructure and the processes and everything that go into it. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to accelerate the business, so help people work better, faster, stronger, and accelerate high quality decision making. Because one thing that we both felt the pain of is trying to make a decision in a business context. And let's be honest, best case, you have 8% of the information you feel like you need in order to make a high quality decision in any scenario. But most of the time, we feel like we have 1 or 2% of the information that we could have. And that's the stuff that's really frustrating, right? When we feel like the business is not giving us clear and concise answers to things that we think it ought to. And so it's our job to make sure that that happens, and that it happens in a way that is not obnoxious to the team. So I've been a part of organizations where the operations team and the systems team feel like they're totally, running the show in a way that is not productive, and they have systems that are built in ways that sellers hate, that managers don't really know how to interface with. We don't want to do that here at Retool. We want this thing to feel kind of like, our aspiration is like when the original iPhone came out, Steve Jobs was very keen on saying that it didn't come with a manual because you shouldn't need one. You should turn it on, right? There was the one button at the top, and it should just make sense.
So I think it's an admirable goal, right? You want your business systems to just make sense when people use them. Salesforce and anything else sort of by extension. But it's a really hard line to toe. I mean, you kind of nailed it that you want to make things easy for sellers, but they want just as little responsibility for this clean data as possible, in my experience, because that responsibility is not fun. It feels like extra work. The common refrain is, hey, I'm supposed to be selling, not punching data into my CRM. So how do you find that line? Like where do you draw the line so that you get what you need to make those decisions as a business, but also don't slow down the sales process too much?
I hear reps say all the time that I don't want to fill in this field or that field. It's just going to slow me down, right? And those are often the sorts of things that managers want populated because they help us make decisions for how we drive the business. But the reality is, if you dig a little bit deeper behind this pushback, what I have found is there's often a lot more nuance to the story. So as an example, reps don't generally hate as much as other things filling in context about deals, particularly when it is to their benefit. So they're writing down things like, MedPick as an example, or BANT, or things along those sorts of lines. That's stuff that's familiar to them. They understand it. It's about deal strategy. They actually see the inherent value there. It communicates to their managers. It actually helps them work with other people on the account team that they want to. So I think an average rep is actually going to see some value in that. What is incredibly laborious for a rep and just incredibly difficult for them to wrap their heads around, in my experience, is the more esoteric stuff. So populating deal type information, or figuring out like a booking type or something along those lines, looking it up on a Confluence page and then putting in, well, this is an expansion deal versus a this versus a that, or getting the term start and end dates just right, all of those sorts of things. But the reality is those sorts of things follow business rules. And if they follow business rules, computers are often best suited, way better than humans, to figure out what they look like. So in our environment, we ask reps to figure out exactly none of those things. We ask them very basic human level questions. So like as an example, when you go to move an opportunity out of an unqualified state into a qualified state, this is our stage 2. There's a ton of information we got to figure out at that time in order to pipeline the deal. Is it expansion? Is it not expansion? How does it fit into our booking structure? All that. We don't ask reps any of that. What we do is we scan the Salesforce account record. We look to see if this is an existing customer, and then we ask them plain text questions. Is this related to this specific business unit that's already active, or is this a new business unit? And then they make an answer to that question, and then we take that answer, and then we fill in all the blanks for them. So that's the sort of thing that they can get behind, because we're not asking them to understand the difference between an expansion and a new subsidiary and all these weird esoteric things. We're just asking them a question that like a person can answer based on the context they have in their head at that moment.
So the key thing is, don't make them go look stuff up. I'll let them just answer questions in the normal stream of their work, and then it's the RevOps burden to produce all the rest of the information that's necessary to properly allocate that deal to the correct rep.
Exactly. I have a strong point of view that anytime a manager or a leader says, hey, can you document how this works in Confluence or in the wiki or whatever the case is, if I actually have to do that for a day-to-day thing that a rep needs to do, that means I've probably failed at delivering a robust and high-quality user experience for that rep. Now, we do have some documentation here at Retool, but usually it's kind of the long tail of stuff. The nuances of your comp policy that we don't generally need to talk about unless we have to adjudicate some sort of conflict, or a really long tail exception process or something like that. But to just work a deal, you shouldn't ever have to pull up a Confluence page.
Yeah. I think most people would agree with you on that. Although, to your point, that's the way it gets set up in a lot of cases.
It is. And the tools now are really, really powerful. So Salesforce has evolved to the point where you can do a bunch of really amazing things with Lightning record pages. So right now, in our Salesforce instance, as you advance opportunities through stages, the few bits of enablement you should need, you need a technical evaluation template. Okay, great. A link to that shows up in the upper right-hand corner of your deal at stage 3 when you're about to write the technical evaluation for that deal. And it goes away when you advance to stage 4, once you've already submitted that. So what we do is we say, okay, what are the things that are going to help the reps? And then let's surface exactly those pieces of information to them at exactly the time that they need it, and then make it go away.
You said something to me when we talked recently about earning the right to do an analysis. And I would love for you to just sort of tell that story or explain that philosophy, because I think it's very related to exactly this, right? Data capture and having the right types of data and the right level of data cleanliness.
When I joined Retool back in 2021, we were just really getting started. We had a handful of sellers on the sales team, and we really didn't understand a whole lot about what our sales process would look like. So our bias was not to get in the way, right? We wanted to have the lowest friction sales process as possible because, like I said, we didn't really know what it looked like yet. So we did things that I don't think are, long-term best practice, but were pragmatic at the time. Like, there was no gating or really regulation between stage 2 when we pipelined a deal and stage 6 when we were saying the deal was getting signed. Very few validation rules or really anything there. Reps could move forward in stages, backward in stages, do all kinds of stuff. And POCs would happen sometimes, and often we'd forget to move it into the POC stage, and all of that sort of normal thing. But that was a bit by design because we were really trying to figure out what was happening. About a year and a half on, I was in our go-to-market leadership channel, and one of our new joiners, a new leader, asked a very reasonable question, which was, well, how many deals die at the POC stage, stage 4? What's our conversion rate look like to close one from that? And a few of the other managers piled on and said, oh yeah, we should definitely, look at that, and we should diagnose and figure out what's going on. I think we're losing this and that. Jon, can you go and dig into this? And I said, no. Absolutely not. And I explained that we had no governance, we had no gating. We had now come a long way where we had a sales process we believed in, we understood what it looked like, but we had not actualized that in our processes. Not only our systems, but our managers weren't holding reps accountable to making sure stages where they needed to be, et cetera. And my comment in that moment was, we have not earned the right to ask the business that question. And I said, if we want to earn the right to ask the business that question, I need from all of you to know exactly what the exit criteria are for all of these deals, to make sure that reps understand that deals move forward and not backwards, to build all of these things into the system in a robust, easy to capture way, and for all of us to lock arms and say, this is how we sell. Now, we can change that over time, but this is how we sell right now, and we're going to actualize that. And so we did that 3 months later. And a few months after that, after I built the timestamps and all of these things, I said, okay, great. Now we've got 3 or 4 months worth of data. I can answer that question.
So just to put a finer point on it, the specific challenge was that before adding that structure in, reps would leave a deal in stage 2 probably longer than it should have been, right? They might have met what should have been the exit criteria, though there was no official exit criteria at the time, right? They would have sufficiently advanced the deal, but not bothered to change it in the CRM, either because they just didn't care to really, and there was nothing requiring them to, or because they weren't necessarily aware of that exit criteria. But it sounds like the key there was hardening the criteria for getting from one stage to the next, making sure that it's necessary for reps to do that in order for them to eventually get paid on the other end, right? To advance the deal at the appropriate points through the stages at Salesforce. And then ultimately, that's what's going to produce some clean data for you to go answer that question.
Exactly. And that's the key, is that clean data isn't just a thing that we do. It's not a vanity exercise, right? Any data that you collect that is clean should be in service of helping the business answer questions or understand something about itself. Otherwise, what's the point? Then you definitely shouldn't have reps wasting time, or anybody really wasting time maintaining it.